Hello and welcome to Freelancing for Journalists.
I'm Emma Wilkinson,
And I'm Lily Cantor.
and welcome back to our final series of 2023. In fact, you might be listening to this in the very early stages of 2024. And this series is all about specialism. So we're talking to journalists who are working in different niches, different areas of journalism about what their working lives look like. But first, before we get to our guest for this week, let's chat about our highlight of the week. Lily, what's yours?
Yes, so mine actually relates to the newsletter that went out this week. Obviously, for listeners, that will have been a while ago. It was, I think, our last newsletter of November, where I had a pitching blackout. I decided not to pitch for a month because I needed to get my head down on other stuff. And I had wondered if any editors would come to me, in hope, thinking, oh, if I go quiet, they're going to come to me. And I hadn't heard anything. And then today I actually got an editor get in contact to say, we've all been manic with Black Friday. That's now out the way. Can you do these two pieces for me in the next couple of weeks? So that was quite nice. And it's also an editor I've not done a huge amount for. So I'm hoping that will be the start of more commissions. And I also negotiated more money because I know he's paid me more in the past, and he was going back to like his base level offer. So I've bumped him up. So we've agreed on a higher rate now. So that's all good. So yeah, it's nice that, I didn't pitch for a month, and yet I've still got some work coming in. So that was mine. How about you, Emma?
That's good. That's good. It paid off in the end. So mine is I'm trying something a little bit different. There is a story in health at the moment. I won't go into details, but I really want to kind of cover and do more on. And instead of like normally just pitching like a general idea, which is what I normally do because I know all my editors and I can sort of go to them with a vague thing. I have got in touch with a team of doctors and public health doctors and GPs in Sheffield who I know are working on this, and set up an interview with them next week to get more detail and get that kind of deep dive and get the story before I pitch it. I'm even considering doing it for a local publication, which I don't normally do. And I think there might be kind of more angles in it, but this isn't usually the way around I work. Normally I would pitch before going to but I just feel like I need more details on what exactly it is that they're doing. But they all immediately said, and it's kind of contacts that I've had over a long time, they all immediately said yes, and so we set up a Zoom for next week. So that part went really smoothly. So let's touch wood.
Yeah.
Let's hope that this different approach actually pays off in the long run. Watch this space. I'll let you know.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're all fired up, ready to do something different, and it's always nice to change things up. So
when it's something that I think you really care about,
yeah,
and you're really interested in, I think that it just gives you that extra bit of drive, doesn't it?
yeah, absolutely. Great. Right, now it's time to introduce our guest this week. Today we have with us music journalist Arusa Qureshi, who has written for The Guardian, Enemy, Time Out and The Scotsman, amongst others. Arusa is based in Scotland and is the current editor of Fest magazine, covering the best of the Edinburgh festivals. She's also written a book called Flip the Script and has recently taken on the role of music programmer manager at Summer Hall.
Hi guys, thanks for having me.
Hello, Arusa. This is a very exciting and eclectic CV. There's lots to talk about within there. Can you sort of kick us off by telling us a bit more about you, what you do, and how you got into music journalism?
Yeah, of course. So, as you said, I'm a writer and editor. I'm based in Edinburgh, and I have a particular focus on music. But I write a lot and research a lot about things to do with diversity, and accessibility, particularly in arts and culture. I used to be the editor of a magazine here in Edinburgh, that has been around since the 80s. Then when COVID struck, the company went in a different direction, as many did, and a lot of us were let go, sadly. So that was the point in which I became a freelancer. So it wasn't really necessarily out of choice. It happened because I lost my job. But ever since I've become freelance, I've done so many great things, and it's worked out really well. Touch wood, everything has gone well, and I've had a really good time doing it. So I've done all kinds of things like writing for publications like The Enemy, The Guardian, The Quietus, and The Skinny, and more. I've done some radio work. I worked on a BBC podcast for a little while. And as you mentioned earlier, I wrote a book which is about women in UK hip hop, and it's called Flip the Script. I'm also the editor of Fest magazine, which covers the Edinburgh festivals every August. And just as of about a month ago, I became the music program manager at Summer Hall, which is very new, but it's going well. It's going well.
That's great. And like you say, it's being able to do those different things and sometimes not quite knowing what's next, like what's your next challenge going to be, or kind of what line of work is freelancing going to take you down. And am I right in thinking that you don't just write about music, that you also sort of cover film arts and culture more broadly?
Yeah, definitely. So I would say music is my focus. It's what I like to write about, but I say I write quite a lot about the arts in Scotland specifically, especially during the summer months in my role at Fest. So we cover genres from comedy to dance, basically everything that comes to the Edinburgh festivals in August. And I think arts festivals like the Fringe, like the International Festival, they're a really good way to cover the arts and culture more generally. But I'd say for anyone that's kind of looking to, write broadly about different genres, sadly there are less and less opportunities in terms of festival coverage, because budgets have been cut so badly. I know that just specifically in terms of the media landscape during the Fringe here in Edinburgh, it's very different to how it was pre-COVID. And I'm also really conscious that these kind of environments can be really perfect for exploitation. And so I always tell my own writers that are on my team, but also others that are working around Edinburgh, just to, be really wary and reject, poor working conditions, and just be really conscious that it can be a really easy time to get manipulated.
Yeah, that's really important. And I think as well, we've come across kind of freelance journalists starting out who are perhaps doing like music reviews and kind of arts things and doing it for free for publications. And it's really easy to get stuck in that world.
Exactly.
I think, and kind of not make that leap.
Yeah.
Obviously you've been working for freelance as a freelance for quite a while. What do you wish you'd known when you started? What advice do you wish you could give to yourself for starting out?
I think it's definitely a bit of an ongoing battle, and I'm sure a lot of freelancers probably say this too, but I wish I knew that it was okay to say no to things, and I didn't have to jump at every opportunity because I was scared that, it wouldn't come back. And I know lots of freelancer friends will say they have the same worries and they, have the same issues. And it's that whole kind of getting work-life balance thing, right? That I know, it takes a long time, and I'm definitely still working on it. I'm not there. But I think when I started, I really wish I was a bit kinder to myself in general, in terms of, not putting so much pressure on getting it perfectly right.
Yeah, that's really important. And I always try and say that it's about a life-work balance rather than a work-life balance. So it's trying to flip it on its head and use the advantage of being freelance to kind of, do the things that you want to do and prioritize them. And that could be stuff that you want to do in your work, but rather than work kind of being central to everything you do. And like with that in mind, if you're doing these various different roles, how does that work sort of logistically and planning wise? Do you segment your week in a certain way, or are you juggling multiple things at the same time?
Definitely juggling. I'd say I haven't got it the exact science down yet. But I think being a freelancer, just generally at any time, it can be quite precarious. I think right now it is very precarious. I know a lot of people have lost work, even myself, as of, like a month ago, I've lost kind of long-term contracts just because of budget cuts. I think that juggling things is kind of, you do it out of necessity because you have to. It's just good to have so many different income streams in case one of them suddenly disappears, which sadly right now is very likely because of everything that's going on. But I kind of weirdly enjoy it as well, because it means I can do so many different things, and it kind of feels like my work never gets boring. I never get tired of the things I'm doing because, if I don't want to work on one particular thing, it's fine. I've got this other thing that I can focus on until I get bored of that and come back. And it's not easy at all. And especially with my new job that I just started recently, having to kind of fit in all the kind of freelance writing and journalism stuff that I do around that has been quite tricky, but I think it just takes a bit of practice and a bit of time.
Yeah, I mean, I was making this point on social media last week, I think, when there's sort of more rounds of redundancies. And I think there'd been an article in the Press Gazette about a regional newspaper reporter who decided to go freelance after his third redundancy round in the year. And actually, while as freelancers we're subject to those pressures too, and budgets can disappear, and we've all kind of had that experience, actually by spreading that across lots of different things that you do, you're actually a bit more, it can feel like you're a bit more protected than just being in a job where if that rug gets pulled out from under your feet, there's nothing else. Do you find that the proportion, the types of things you do changes through the year? Does that kind of really fluctuate?
Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of partly out of choice as well, because yeah, I like to keep the variety. But for example, like I said earlier, Fest that happens exclusively over the summer. So I know over the summer months I'll be doing a lot of, editing, reviewing, writing. Whereas maybe earlier in the year I might be working on kind of other bits that are not really necessarily writing related, but it could be more, you know, radio stuff or curation or something else. But yeah, it's that whole thing of having a what people call like portfolio career. And it's a really annoying term, I know, but I think it's for me as a freelancer, it's the only way I feel like I can make it work, and not feel so anxious all the time by having lots of different things that I know are coming up or I have on the go.
Yeah, it's a safe strategy to do that, to not have all your eggs in one basket. So when it comes to music journalism, then, for sort of our listeners that are perhaps wanting to get into this sort of specialism, what would your advice be? Because I would have thought it's quite tricky, and it's not just about reviewing gigs. There must be so, many more different elements to it and kind of niches within it. So kind of where do you start?
So I always tell people that are interested in music journalism generally to read as much criticism as you can. And that, of course, applies to other fields as well. But in music journalism, I think it's really important to read criticism that you don't necessarily agree with as well. So whether that's reviews or whether that's features, whatever, about maybe an album that you really like, but the other person hasn't liked, I think it's really important to read and understand why people have certain criticisms. Um, I'd also say it's good to practice as much as you can. So when I first started out, when I was like a teenager, I would write in like journals and like online blogs all the time. That was just for me, just to practice. And it's not really about constantly having to share that, but just working on it for yourself, as a place to practice. And if sometimes great ideas can come about that way, and then you can actually build them and work on them. And relating to what I was saying earlier about the kind of portfolio career thing, just be open to all experiences. So even if it's not in your specific kind of music genre or field, be open to writing about different genres and different like formats, because you never know when you might find your niche in a particular genre that you just never thought in a million years that you would. You might end up being the expert in that genre that people come to. And it can just be like a really useful exercise, I guess, to be able to cover different genres. And then the last thing I think I always say to every journalist that's starting out is that it's whether you're working on your own blog or your publication or someone else's, it's fine if you're building up a portfolio, and that's great, but whatever you do, don't work for free for really long periods. It's really important to know your worth and make sure that you get paid for the work that you do. I think it's never okay to exploit, particularly young journalists. So I always say to people that, do as much free writing as you need to do to build up a solid portfolio that you can use, but don't fall into that trap of it just becoming the norm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one thing that we as experienced freelancers try and push all the time, because there's a lot of kind of lack of confidence, I suppose, of like, oh, I don't know if I'm good at a place yet where I deserve to get paid. It's like, your stuff's being published, you deserve to get paid, end of story. I'm interested in, because you've written for so many different places, I'm interested in terms of how you get that work. So how much of your writing work, for example, comes from you pitching ideas or saying, I'm going to this gig, or are you kind of going to stuff first and having a look at it, or coming, or editors coming to you? Kind of how does that work, and does that change over time as you become more experienced as well?
I'd say that I don't do much pitching at the moment at all, only because I'm really lucky and fortunate enough that I have quite a few things on the go. And I think to be good at pitching, I think you do need to put time into it and accept that, you'll be sending lots of emails and you'll be getting lots of replies that are no's. And at the moment, just because of all my workload, I don't have time to be able to put kind of the dedication into making pitches good and making them sending them at a level that I'd be happy with them. So at the moment, I'm lucky that I kind of, things tend to come to me and I get approached. But if there is something that I'm really excited about or something that I have a good idea for, I'll definitely put in the time and try to pitch it and, make sure it's a decent pitch that I believe in. And then in terms of like editing work, again, people tend to come to me if they're looking for an editor. I think being freelance, the kind of great thing is that you can jump in quite last minute and you can get things done really quickly. And because I'm setting my own time, that can be a bonus. So in general, I just try to be kind of reliable and kind of on it as possible. And then I find people do come to me for things.
And this new role you've taken on as a music program manager, can you tell us a bit more about that? And are there any sort of transferable skills from your journalism work?
Yeah, so as I said, it's a quite a new thing. Summer Hall is a big arts venue here in Edinburgh, and it's a year-round arts venue, but it's one of the kind of major venues during the Fringe in particular. So I run the music program now throughout the year, which is really cool, but very scary as well. And I think the cool thing is I've been able to stay freelance out of choice. So even though I've got like a set number of days and times that I work there, I'm still freelance. I can do everything else that I want to do. I think being a journalist, the skills definitely have helped me out, just because on the one hand, there's like the kind of admin side of things. I think I'm quite good at just organizing my time really well. So I've been able to use that for this role. And also just in terms of the music journalism, having the knowledge in the first place to be able to book bands and artists and knowing which artists and bands are doing well or which artists and bands people would want to see, that's been really helpful. And then also knowing how to kind of do that really annoying thing of chasing people for information, whether it's like images or, editorial about gigs and artists. It's a very annoying thing that we all have to do as journalists, but I can do it, and it's been very, very useful for this role because I have to do that a lot here as well.
Yeah, that makes complete sense to me. That kind of just having no qualms at all about sending out multiple emails and just following people up and chasing and even just reaching out to people in the first place. I think that after you've kind of been doing journalism for a while, you just get over any kind of confidence issues that you might have about that, and you just kind of crack on and do it, don't you? I'm really interested in, you mentioned that championing diversity is really important to you. So can you tell us a bit more about that? And well, I'm interested in also how that's kind of informed the journalism that you've done over the years, and also advice for us as freelancers, I think, on how we can all do a bit better at that.
Yeah, so I think my interest in making arts and culture like as accessible as possible it's come from wanting to be a journalist at a really young age, but in Scotland in particular, feeling like I couldn't do it because I didn't see anyone like me doing it. And I'm really glad that I stuck it out and I, decided, no, I deserve to be here. It's fine. But that it really kind of started with that, and I've always been really conscious that I want in Scotland, especially the young journalists to feel like they really belong here and they should be here, because of how I felt when I was younger. I think that there's been lots of really positive changes that have happened in terms of diversity in the industry, and people acknowledging that it's something that you can't ignore, you have to really think about and think about really solidly. I think maybe at one time, like magazines and publications, etc., they could kind of get away with not thinking about it too much. But I think everything that happened with COVID and the Black Lives Matter movement, etc., it's really taught everyone that there's just so much work that still needs to be done. Like I said before, especially when it comes to encouraging people like me to get involved in the first place. And I think a lot of the kind of pledges that people made to make a difference back in like lockdown period, I don't think I've seen enough action personally myself. I think part of the problem is that a lot of the power kind of still lies with people that don't want to give up their own power, if that makes sense, or not give up a portion of their own power to make a significant change. And I think that there's some really wonderful people working in journalism, in the music industry, that really do want to change things and want to see like the landscape more kind of representative of what it actually is. But at the moment, I think, for me anyway, there's a problematic behavior that still constantly goes unnoticed. And I keep seeing things that are just like, blatant tokenism, for example. And I think it's easy when you're somebody that's really championing that work and really wanting to push for diversity and accessibility. It's really easy to say, oh, I don't want to do this, have this fight anymore, because it's too much, and it's too much to have to keep fighting for this and asking the same questions again and again. But then I always have to remember how I felt when I was younger, and I really, really don't want people to feel like that. So that's kind of why I keep doing this kind of work, and I keep trying to kind of make the industry, or make the landscape as kind of welcoming as possible. It's a battle for sure, and I don't know what the answer is, but I think it's really important that we all collectively try to lift younger journalists who are just starting out up as much as we possibly can, so that they feel like they belong.
Yeah, absolutely. And it resonates actually with a guest of ours from a couple of weeks back, who was a woman working in the sort of classic car area, and obviously that's a very male dominated sphere, and she's come across a lot of issues with sexism. So yeah, it just shows you that it's in all sort of genres of journalism, and obviously all sort of sectors of society. I guess as freelancers, though, I suppose in a way, I don't know what you think, but are we in a slightly stronger position to push back and to champion, because we haven't got that fear of, what's my boss going to say? Do you think that's the case, or does it just make things even more precarious?
I think on the one hand, yes, because you don't have, you're not stuck in terms of a contract or whatever. But I know a lot of freelancers that find it very, very difficult, because they're scared that if they say anything, people won't hire them again. And it's ridiculous that that's the fear that we have to have, but it is. And I've seen people online, especially, write about how they've been blacklisted because they criticized somebody or something. And that's absolutely not how it should work. We should feel comfortable calling out bad behavior and calling out things that we see that aren't right. But I do think that being a freelancer, we don't really have the same protections that people might have that are in contracted work. So I think it's difficult.
Yeah, it's difficult. And it's something, I mean, writing about kind of health and medicine, I'm really conscious that everybody ends up going to the kind of same white male middle class doctors for comment on stuff, because they're the ones that will pick up the phone and have talked to you a million times before. So it's harder to kind of go the extra mile, find new voices. Kind of it's the harder option, but we should all be doing it. And like, the more you do it, more it becomes routine, the more your brain goes, oh, that's not right, who I've got code there, that's not, from so many different angles, from like different areas of the country, different ages, different, do you know what I mean? It's just everything. So yeah, I think those of us who are a bit more experienced and a bit more long in the tooth on this kind of should be taking that stand to push back to those who feel more vulnerable, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's difficult. It's never going to be like an easy thing to do, but like you said, the more we do it, the more normalized it will become.
Absolutely. So let's talk about something more positive. What's your favorite part of the job? Because you do so many different things. I wonder if there's something that stands out for you as being the thing you really enjoy.
In terms of the music journalism side of things, I really love interviewing people. And I've been really lucky enough in my career so far to have been able to interview musicians and artists I really, really respect and love. And it's kind of to do with I love hearing people's stories and then being able to turn that into something that maybe somebody that doesn't know that person can find interesting. And I really love telling stories that relate to people that are or projects that are maybe not as often heard or underrepresented, and maybe don't get the attention that they deserve. That's like my favorite thing to do for sure.
Yeah, that's really nice to be able to sort of shine a spotlight on, yeah, an individual or a group who are, yeah, perhaps not, that well known. And with that, if you're interviewing musicians, and obviously most gigs are at night time, do you find that you're quite nocturnal in your work? And because, most freelancers kind of will work normal-ish 9 to 5 hours. But what's your kind of working hours like?
It really varies, to be honest. But I've always been quite nocturnal just in how I do things, like work and do things anyway. But before starting this job at Summer Hall, I'd say that I'd like be at shows quite regularly just for fun or for work. But now that curating gigs is part of my job, I'm at shows all the time. And I wouldn't have it any other way. I love it. And so in the Summer Hall, there'll usually be a few gigs in a normal week, and that will range from, like a small local show to like a huge band that's touring all over the country. Um, and yeah, like I said, I have just started, but I'm trying to be as present as possible. So I am there all the time, and because that is the best way to learn, right? I don't review gigs as much these days as I used to, but in the Fringe, for example, I will be reviewing like 5, 6 things a day easily. And that ranges from music to comedy to theatre, whatever. And that's just kind of normal in that month. So it's weird that it goes from, doing the odd review here and there, and then a month doing a crazy amount every day.
Yeah, that sounds intense, like that many reviews.
Yeah, but that's just the landscape here. That's what everyone does. I'd say that I do less than probably most journalists because I have the editing side of it to do. So I'm stuck at my desk quite a lot. But my team, who are all wonderful, who go out and review things, like people do so much. And I'm so impressed.
Yeah. No, that's impressive that you can do that many, because I do about half a dozen theatre reviews a year, and each one of those reviews, it's like I've got to start the cogs again and work out kind of how do I write a review. And some of them can take me ages to do. So I couldn't imagine doing 5 or 6 a day.
Yeah, I definitely have cut down on the amount of reviews in August, but there are still members of my team that will do crazy amount, and they'll be up like all night writing reviews and submitting first thing in the morning, and then sleep a bit and then go out and do it all over again. It's mad, but yeah, a huge amount of respect for those journalists that can do that.
Yeah, maybe when you're in the zone a bit more, you can just kind of yeah, get your writing head on and just be efficient.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess finally, one thing that I'm interested in is, if you're trying to make a name for yourself in music journalism, how important is it to find something unique, something that no one else is talking about, or a unique angle on something? So when you're doing those interviews, for example, are you really looking for that kind of standout, nobody's ever said this about this band before kind of thing?
Yeah, definitely. And that can be very, very hard to do because, especially if it's like a really well-known person, they'll have told all their stories. They'll be, the same kind of story written again and again. But it's about finding like maybe an angle that's a bit different that sets you apart. And I'd always say to like younger journalists who are kind of looking for advice on in things like interviews, whatever you do, don't exaggerate or make things up, because I've seen that happen before and it never goes down well, where people will think, I'll just exaggerate this because it'll make it stand out a bit more from everything else, and only do that if you're 100% sure that it's gonna work and it's gonna be okay. But finding a niche in music journalism, I think, is always really, it's important, but I think the only way you can do that is if you try everything. If you try to write about as much as you possibly can, then you might find your niche. And like I said before, just being open to it being a genre that you maybe didn't expect, one that you maybe like listening to, but you didn't expect to actually really enjoy kind of doing deep dives into. That happened with me with hip hop. I mean, I've grown up loving hip hop so much, and I kind of started writing about it kind of seriously when I was at uni. And then it's just become the thing that I love researching and I love writing about more than any other genre. And so I'd say like in Scotland, people do sometimes come to me for hip hop related things, which is great. So I think it's possible to find your niche for sure if you just show enough of a passion and interest in it.
Yeah, and I love that idea of just like trying everything first. It's like, box of chocolates, you've got to try every single one before you decide on what your favorite is. Yeah, that's a really nice way to look at it. Oh, that's a really great place to round off, I think. But just before we go, we'd love to hear from you a recommendation of a piece of work by a freelance journalist. So what's your lookout that we should be going away and reading?
Sure. So there's honestly so many people I can recommend because there are so many wonderful freelance journalists out there that write about music that I love so much. But I'm going to recommend something by a friend who's a journalist, if that's okay. Her name's Becca Ingalls, and she is a fantastic music journalist who writes various things, but she focuses on electronic music in particular, and in particular, actually within that drum and bass. And last month, she wrote a really brilliant piece for UKF, which is about Glasgow's drum and bass scene. And it looks at the history and it looks at where the scene is currently. And if you're interested in learning more about Scottish drum and bass more generally, Becca is absolutely the person to kind of speak to and follow. And yeah, she's just writing some really interesting things about a niche, I guess, that not many other people are writing about.
Well, that's a fantastic recommendation. Thanks so much. We will dig out a link and add that in our show notes. So thank you so much, Arusa. That's been so helpful. Great insight into the world of music journalism. That's it for this episode. If you want bonus podcast episodes, you can always become a premium newsletter subscriber, where you get access to an extra weekly newsletter and podcasts every few weeks as part of that as well. You can find out more about us and all our resources on our website at freelancingforjournalists.com. We'd also like to say, we always try to remember to say a massive shout out to our producer, Maddie Drury, who does a fantastic job putting all this together.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say, I will add to the show notes that recommendation for Becca Ingalls. I love drum and bass, so I'm going to go away and look that up. And also, we were talking about working for free or not working for free earlier, so I'll put a link to an episode we did quite a while back discussing that topic, so that will be in our show notes as well. But that's it. I think that's everything for this week, so thank you so much and we'll be back again soon.
Bye for now.
Bye.